If we look at the production in a different way, we see it today especially as part of a circle of accumulation. So it's accumulation of capital, it's an economic process, distinct, actually I'll come back to it now, distinct in another respect. We have first investment. We are talking now about capital. It's distinct, it's not part of the, or genuine part of the original process as a core, but it is invested from outside to initialize this process of production. Investment, buying labor, buying raw materials, bringing it together. Then you have a split. Purchases and consumption. Consumption in the widest sense, but as well in the narrow sense. We are talking here about use value. You can only use plastic for it or some other materials, but you cannot use textiles. At least I didn't see most yet were made from textiles. So it is something about use values. It has to be usable. It has to be there to be used by people. At the same time, the aim, the goal of this process is generation of profit. There we are to another set of values, meaning exchange values. I'm not really interested if anybody can use it, but I'm interested in the fact that everybody, if possible, buys it. See this, coming back to the 3 years, we buy every 3 years a new computer, although our computer would still work another 6 years, because there is this circle of, yes, you have to buy something to be up to date. Different mechanisms there in place. The profit generated by this is used then for reinvestment to some part, but not only, because there is the problem, one fundamental problem of the economy, that today, being a split process, being distinct from these different areas, or having the different areas distinct, separated, we have a huge amount of money that actually cannot be reinvested because nobody buys it. Nobody buys the stuff. It's not so much that we don't want it. It's not so much that I don't want to pay you higher wages, but I have to make profit. Sorry about this, but this is what the economic system, as functionally differentiated system, expects from me to do. If I don't follow this, it's not that I'm a good person, but simply I'll be out of competition. So it's not my bad behavior. Just the need for me to survive within this system. The creation of mountains of debt. The creation of mountains of debt coupled with extraordinary growth of fiscal profits. If you imagine, I always had difficulties to imagine these figures. 1970%, 110% of US GDP in terms of private debt. This is something huge amount, but then the rise to 293% is something extraordinary. Now, this is something I cannot grasp, but a rise of financial profits between 1995 and 2007 in the United States by 300% before the crisis is something I can't believe even any kind of terms. It's just outrageous. But this is the money that should have gone into consumption. But it could not go into consumption because then I would have lower profits. So it's a strange mechanism that actually the finance market was getting independent of the actual production process. We did not produce products, but we produced financial assets. This could be kept to some extent alive within the capitalist system. But what we see throughout history is a development of power structures, of political powers and economic powers. I cannot go into detail here, but it's an interesting development that you have a shift from exploitation in political terms of people using power, using control over certain mechanisms and forcing other people to do something, making their own profit. And then you have the shift at another stage to profits emerging from the system, within the system, wage labor. It's a very honest, very legal thing. I employ you, you get money, you work for me, a certain amount of money, of hours. It's relatively complicated if you go through it and calculate it. But nevertheless, it's within the economic process. What we face now is another shift again, that actually the economic process is interrupted. It's separated to such an extent that political power is overwhelming, and that the financial markets or these multinationals have not only the economic power, huge resources disposable, but at the same time huge political power. I was surprised, I don't know how many years back, when I read something in the Financial Times. It's actually my favorite paper because they know what capitalism is about. They have to know it. So they had been writing something of Bill Gates having a meeting, I don't know who it was, one of the French prime ministers, deciding about the political the educational strategy in France. Bill Gates. What is Bill Gates about doing in France to decide national politics? So you see the difficulties there of, yes, we have nation states, we have this pattern of they are dominant, but at the same time they give power away on a voluntary basis to Bill Gates, to I don't know whom, and to other various forces, the World Bank having huge control today. Globalized capitalist societies, and I hesitate personally a little bit to still speak of the state, but I think the state structures are still not completely, at least, undermined. Localized, meaning that at the same time as we find the move to power on the global level, World Bank, IMF, even to some extent you can say United Nations, we find at the same time that the local level, in terms of global centers, Sydney is, I think, one of them, Beijing, Brazil, I don't know the different places, play a huge role. I mentioned Brazil because you have even a so-called developing country now that is joining this part of a powerful, mighty, small number of cities.